Happy New Year and a very warm welcome from IET on campus UET Lahore. IET is going to celebrate its 150th anniversary this May 17th. And for this purpose, we're going to celebrate the difference makers around us. So today, we're going to chat with a massive difference maker, Dr. Ramla Qureshi. Dr. Ramla Qureshi is the CEO of Women Engineers Pakistan, which is aimed at empowering women engineers. She has also done her PhD and MSc from the University of Buffalo with a focus on structural and earthquake engineering. And with her inspiring records, I would like to ask her, what do you love most about your job?
Hi, Kashaf. Thank you so much for having me. And I feel absolutely humbled and honored to be here. I never realized that I was making that big of a change, but it really motivates me so much more to know that, okay, I am reaching the right people and I am reaching the right sound waves as well. So thank you so much for having me. As to your question, I love everything about my job, but most of all, absolutely love the heavy machinery I work with when it comes to my, core engineering specific jobs. Growing up, I used to be pretty scared of damaging equipment. So, for example, um, in Pakistan, in schools, for example, especially in girls' schools, for some reason, they don't really let you operate the microscopes and things by yourself. There is a lab assistant who does that for you. And that sort of always restricted me from, making my own mistakes. And for some reason, now I'm very scared of, big machinery. It was a difficult learning curve when I came here for my PhD research to learn to operate, 55,000 pound machines and things like that with confidence that is needed to be a good engineer. You need to be able to make those mistakes. So yeah, I never realized how much I would love working with machines, but I absolutely do. Um, the other half of me is, as you mentioned, the person who is advocating for getting more women in Pakistan into STEM fields. I love absolutely every thread of that job. Um, it pumps me up so much when I speak to people, when I meet brilliant young women such as yourself. You have no idea how much you guys motivate me into moving further. Young girls who perhaps have never even, had access to internet, when they touch paper microscopes and things like that, and they're able to make sense of it, and you can see the gears in their head moving, which, you walk into a classroom, and what was a timid, shy classroom is now surprisingly active, involved, happy to learn science students. That change that happens in, about 15 minutes of when we walk into a classroom, and that's the highlight of this job, because I can see the clicking happening in their heads, and I can see the interest spark. um, it's amazing. There's nothing like it.
So you've talked about how much you love WEP. So was there an incident or a moment or everything all together that you thought, I have to do this, I have to come up with this organization?
In all honesty, so I've been asked this question many, many times through the years, and I've had quite enough time to, think about it in retrospect. And I always used to think, oh, maybe that one thing that happened, that one professor said something and that did something to me, or oh no, my mom used to get us these different books and stories about creating and building and innovating and how things work, and amazing places and amazing machinery and amazing inventions in the world. Or maybe it was that one NASA engineer that I met. But like you said, it's actually a mixture of everything. um, I didn't realize how much I loved engineering until I graduated, and I actually stepped foot into the engineering field, and I got my hands dirty, and I realized, okay, this comes naturally to me. um, I get it. right? And that is, even hearing myself say this out loud is very weird for me, because in undergrad I used to think, what did I do? I am the odd one out. I mean, literally, our professors would stand here and just, put those four girls in the classroom of 70, 80 boys on the spot and say, what are you doing here? It's not for you. Civil engineering is a very manly field, blah, blah, blah. So we internalized that fear. We internalized that, okay, we made the wrong decision. Maybe we should have gone into something, that is quote unquote more welcoming for women. And so somehow people seem to think that, oh, tech and computer sciences is the only place where women should go if they are, good in math. And I used to believe that at that time, until I actually stepped into the field and I started enjoying what I was doing, and it started to make a lot of sense to me. However, there was still this part of me that was facing friction every day. Um, we now we call this the prove it again syndrome, where every day in this office of men who know how capable you are. You may have been the gold medalist of your university, but they would still ask you to prove yourself, because, aapko kya pata, what do you know, right? Bookish knowledge. What do you know? You don't know how to apply it. And they say bookish knowledge as if it's supposed to demoralize us or discredit us. There is good in knowing bookish knowledge, but yeah, we also know how to apply it, and that application comes from making the mistakes that we should be allowed to make. So yeah, W.
How does this organization basically
So
operate?
yeah, WEP Women Engineers Pakistan is, so sorry, I tend to go on tangents when I talk about WEP. Um, but it is an amalgamation of all of these things. And honestly, in the starting couple of years, I just blundered into a lot of different things that we now do as very concrete pillars of who we are. They majorly just started off as experiments that I was doing. So, for example, um, what WP is basically divided into three groups. We function in three major focus groups areas, and the first and foremost is undergraduate women, such as yourself. And I always say that the reason these are my primary uh, focus is because these girls have already made that first step, right? They've already chosen that I want to do engineering, or I want to study physics, or I want to study biotechnology or immunology or virology or whatever on the spectrum of STEM there is. They've already made that first step. So I don't have to spend time motivating these women. I have to spend time um, getting them ready for the job market, and getting them ready for taking up leadership roles, and getting them ready for the skills of today and tomorrow, right? So I usually say that, okay, no matter how much I try, I still don't live in utopia. So we know for a fact that in Pakistan, if there are two resumes of equally qualified candidates, a guy and a girl, we know for sure that the guy is going to get the job if it's higher paid, or if it's in hard area or something like that. So what we do is we give our girls and undergraduate girls, we give them a lot of software trainings, a lot of soft skills trainings. We make them so much more employable, right? Within their tenure with WEP, we hook them up with internships in different companies across the country. We give them access to conferences, seminars. We provide seminars. We provide webinars. It's a lot of what we call an alternative college experience. The one caveat here is that we mandate that we have 25% boys in a campus team. And oftentimes these boys call me or text me that, Madam, people make fun of us. Why are you part of Women Engineers Pakistan? And I specifically relish this part of it, because here is where I get a chance to explain to these men that we can't do this without you. It's not a man versus woman thing. We need men as allies, as our brothers, our fathers, our sons, our husbands, to stand with us, because it's no longer a conversation between me versus you. It's all of us together, because we have to move forward together. So that's the story of our first major focus group here. We, like I said, provide a lot of software training and soft skills trainings, internships, conferences. The second focus group is then high school and middle school students. Here we majorly go to all girls schools, and we haven't really written it in any of our policies anywhere, but somehow, as it happens, that more often than not, our campus ambassadors, they choose high schools for girls that are in underserved areas across the country. Um, what happens is then when we walk into these schools, some of these girls are not allowed access to internet, or some of these girls have not even seen a laptop before, right? So I can't step into this classroom and say, okay, I will teach you Arduino today, or robotics, or I would teach you coding today. If I do that, which we did initially, like I said, we made a lot of blunders in the start, we're only going to scare these young girls away, right? They're already scared of math and physics and chemistry and all of these things. So what we do here is that we curate a bunch of very exciting games. We call them games. They're basically activities. But one example that I usually give is that of a paper microscope. These are called foldscopes. They were developed by a Stanford professor. They cost like $1. And I give these paper microscopes into the hands of these girls. They're very intimidated at the start, but they get the hang of it in like 3 minutes. And at the fourth minute, they are these amazing scientists who are looking at it like, oh yeah, I saw the photo of this cell. It looks like an onion cell. And I am just blown away because I don't remember what an onion cell should look like, right? But these girls know, because they do remember seeing a graphic illustration of it in a book, but they've never really seen it by themselves. And their confidence just shoots through the roof. All of a sudden now they have access, right? And they can touch and feel, and we let them make those mistakes because, again, it's just $1. So it's not that big a deal, right? Um, so we do a lot of this. All of this, by the way, the for the second focus group is completely free of cost. In a lot of our work across Pakistan, we've noticed that parents tend to be hesitant to spend money towards their daughters' secondary faculties, right? It's just a fact of our culture. So we try to get as many free of cost work done as possible, which is why the teams that go into these schools are comprised of girls from the first focus group. So we sort of recycle our resources here. Because we were already providing a lot of software skills trainings and things like that, most of them free of cost, if not very subsidized rates. All we ask of these girls in undergraduate school, universities, is to go to these schools and provide these, games and trainings and things of that sort. And then the last and final focus group is the working women. I always say this, that, okay, we hyped up our girls towards STEM, we lit that spark in them, and then we, prepped them up for the job market. We gave them the software skills training, the salary negotiation skills training, and all of that. But then we're sending them back into the workplace that was designed for our grandfathers, right? A workplace where, um, again, women were never meant to exist, but all of a sudden they do. You would be surprised to know how in many multinational companies in Pakistan, there's no concept of a female bathroom, which to me just blows my mind away, because to me it's not even a question of male and female, it's a question of being human, right? To have access to basic things. So these are some of the things that we advocate for. We work with different organizations. We partnered with the World Bank back in 2018. We worked with the UN. I remember back in, I want to say 2016, but around that time, we also did a national level conference with the USAID. So we work on national scale. I think last year, no, oh my God, in 2019, 2019 still appears like last year to me. But we had this conference with Schlumberger across the country as well. So we're constantly trying to raise awareness. We're constantly trying to advocate for better workplaces, better policies for women in engineering specifically. I remember we were doing a webinar a couple of months ago, and this male colleague of mine said that while we are seeing a lot of female participation in the tech sector, I would only rest when I see my female colleagues in the construction field as well. And that is when I will give up and I will say that, oh yeah, mission achieved. And he really got me thinking that he's right. We have a lot of ground to cover, and we can only pat ourselves on the back when we see that, okay, on those levels where we cannot even imagine a woman standing there in the construction field, we have to get to that level in
You
Pakistan.
mentioned the mistakes and blunders. How did you make your way through these challenges and barriers? What was your secret ingredient?
Um, my secret ingredient is in Urdu we call it ditai. I don't know what to call it in English. Stubbornness, perhaps. Um, that I think it's a refusal to quit. I'm not gonna sugarcoat things here. It's very difficult to do this work in Pakistan. Just because the sheer nature of what we're trying to do is it's difficult globally, but it's very difficult in Pakistan because I mean, even in the Pakistan Engineering Council, for years now, we've been shouting that get more women on board, get more women on your election panels, on your decision making panels, and it's just that they keep saying that where are the women? The women exist, they just don't speak out, or they're not allowed to speak out, or they don't have a digital footprint. It's just a mixture of so many different things. So sometimes I do tell my husband that, okay, today I quit, I don't want to do this. And then he just smiles and nods and he says he realizes that I can't quit this because it's part of who I am. So I would just say that it's sheer stubbornness on my part. And I think that has reflected a lot in who the team of Women Engineers Pakistan now is as well.
Resilience is surely the key. So, you worked in STEM fields more than half of your life. What do you think of the impact engineering has made on your life and those around you?
Everybody around me these days is an engineer, so it would be a biased answer, but here's what I can explain. My mom, she's a medical doctor, and growing up, both my parents are doctors, by the way. Growing up, we needed to ask our parents to translate what they meant because they would talk in some medical terms, and we were like, I mean, translate in English or in Urdu, please, normal for normal people. Like we don't get it, right? Now I can understand because now I think that way. Now my examples of even sometimes if I'm giving my family a lecture about how important it is to have each other's back, I would give examples of buildings and how there has to be a foundation and then there has to be load redistribution and sometimes people just look at me like, what is she saying? But it just makes sense to me. Math has become my language now. I still struggle with it. I won't shy away from saying that. Even after a PhD, I still struggle with it. But engineering showed me how math is the mother language of the universe, and engineering is how we put it to use. Math and physics is the application. So engineering is the application of all science. And it's absolutely beautiful and artistic, and it's nothing like what it's shown to be. It's art, right? Something that didn't exist now does, and it's something that I brought into fruition. To me, that's just absolutely beautiful. I have started saying that God is a mathematician because now I understand the math bit behind everything. I know that there are memes on the internet that go like, oh, why did we learn the Pythagorean theorem in high school if we were never going to apply it? And I'm like, you do apply it. You apply it every day. You use the GPS. You apply the triangulation every day. You just need to see it. Right. So we don't even know how engineering works in our daily life every day. And so yeah, this has been a very strange change in my life, that now everything in my brain works in a mathematical function, in a mathematical fashion. And but for people around me, I also say, I've heard, well, this is my mother's explanation, that my personality has changed. It's become more logical. And perhaps engineering has something to do with that as well. And perhaps my work with Women Engineers Pakistan has something to do with that as well, because I've been forced to come out of my comfort zone and interact with people. And I used to think that, oh, everybody understands these things and everybody um, knows why the Pythagorean theorem is taught, but only now can I relate and only now can I empathize with how people think. If I hadn't done my work in the past decade with Women Engineers Pakistan, I wouldn't have had this empathy. I would have been probably living in my ivory tower somewhere thinking, oh, look how smart I am. But turns out not so much. Turns out there's a world of knowledge out there, and I've only just touched it. So, yeah, engineering has absolutely completely changed who I am.
There are many women that are listening to you right now. So, what would you say to them? What steps should they take for their growth in engineering domains?
Absolutely. So one thing that I mentioned previously as well was my fear of handling equipment, right? That was rooted with my hesitance to make mistakes. Growing up in Pakistan, and I've noted this in every single girl I've interacted with, is that we are all perfectionists. Our parents teach us to be perfect. Our parents teach us to not make mistakes ever, because and they instill this fear of mistakes in our brain that is very difficult to move past. So what happens is that the first failure we encounter, we give up. We get so scared of being labeled as a failure or being labeled as anything other than a perfectionist. um, what I learned in my work is that perfectionism only hinders your work. um, One lesson that a cab driver here in the US taught me, is that he was a cab driver from Kashmir, which is adjacent area to Pakistan in India. So he could relate to my culture, and um, he had no business telling me that, but perhaps it was a lesson that he had learned. And he told me that, and I would say this in Urdu first, is that beta, um, hesitance Pakistan chhod kar aana, which means that leave your hesitance back in Pakistan. I would rephrase it is that leave your hesitance back in yesterday. That's it. From today on, stop hesitating. Go ahead, make your mistake. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's not that big a deal as your brain is telling you it is. It's okay to fail. It's okay to not be perfect. You uh, basically, I made my share of mistakes. You told me that I am an inspiring person. If you saw how much I fail every day, you would be surprised. I, like I said, I have 1,000 ideas. I apply to 50%. I applied 50% of those. I fail in like 49%. Every day that happens to me. Every day I fail in humongous things. To the point that I used to laugh that I have a PhD in failure. So that is basically my life lesson, that I got comfortable with failing. Every day I fail and I'm fine with it. So much so that my motivation in life is not to avoid failure, but to, see how I get back up the next time. Okay, this failed. Now let's see what Ramla is going to do to get back to where she was. And that's basically what I would say to any girl who's listening as well, that let go of that want of being perfect. Just let go of that. My male colleagues, they mess up machinery costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they show up the next day with the same confidence that they had before they messed that machine up, right? It's because they know, okay, it's fine. What's the big deal? We'll fix it. We are engineers. We can fix it. And I still aspire to have this confidence. I don't, by the way, I'm working on it. It's a lot of unlearning to do, but I'm working on it. But that is where I aspire to be confident in making mistakes, because I know that, okay, if I made that mistake, I can go fix it as well. So yeah, that's basically all I would say. It's okay if you don't know how to code. It's okay if you don't know how to do something. These are all things that you can learn um, if you are familiar with the concept of failing and moving on.
So, what did young Dr. Ramla think when she was choosing engineering?
Okay, this may surprise you, but I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Uh, I used to have, posters lined on my walls in my room of Pakistan Air Force, the the pilots and the F-7, the JF-17 Thunder and whatnot. And I used to be a fanatic about fighter jets. But the year that I got eligible to apply was the year they stopped hiring women as GDPs, as general duty pilots in the Pakistan Air Force. And I cried my eyes out. I cried so much. Um, so young Ramla Qureshi wanted to do something completely different. And while I couldn't be the general duty pilot that I wanted to be, growing up, I used to unhinge doors and open up my Walkman, if you remember what those things were, and fix it myself. And I had this um, inclination towards, you know, do it yourself sort of things, or build it yourself things. And that really helped me get into engineering and make it my own as well.
And I'm so enthusiastic to ask this. What are you planning to do ahead?
I am a structural and earthquake engineer with a research focus on structural resilience and against multiple different hazards such as, uh, fires, earthquakes, um, explosions as well. So my plan is to move ahead and actually join a consultancy perhaps, or join a university as a faculty member and further my research. I love research. Um, it does get a little bit tiring sometimes, but I absolutely do love the research work that I do, because I know that my research is readily applicable into making structures safer, more sustainable. As we move forward, we know that climate change or extreme weather events are going to have a huge impact on how we live, how we survive. Just this COVID-19 pandemic taught us a lot of lessons in how proper living spaces could have helped us curb the effect of this virus, or proper access to infrastructure that leads you towards hospitals and critical care could have helped us better. So there's a lot of civil engineering that goes into all of these things, and I am very intentionally aiming to make myself useful there, because in the next 10 years or so, the entire world needs to switch towards sustainable living, because this is the time that we can save our planet from irreversible problems. And Pakistan, most of all, is as we know, is it we our country is among the top 10 most vulnerable countries in the world that are going to be affected from extreme weather events and climate change effects. So I aim to make myself useful there. Um, Earthquakes are not very predictable, but we can definitely make our buildings more resilient towards them. I always say that earthquakes don't kill people, buildings do. So buildings and bridges, if they fall, these are the things that kill people. So it's us as engineers who are responsible for these things. So we can't turn a blind eye towards them. I don't know if you remember, but the 2005 Kashmir earthquake in Pakistan was one of the reasons why I stepped into this field. That earthquake killed over 80,000 people in Pakistan. And when I moved here to the US, I found out that the Northridge earthquake killed about 88 people or so. And everything in the US changed. All building codes changed. Everything was made more seismic specific. But in Pakistan, 80,000 people die and nothing much really happens. I mean, fine, we started making a building code. Fine, we have finally started applying it in at least in big projects, but on in at a residential level, at smaller scales, still there's a long way to go. So that is one of my major plans as well, to actually help Pakistan realize that we need better engineering, and that has a lot to. And I want to use my on ground skills that I gained from working in Women Engineers Pakistan, working with Women Engineers Pakistan, that comes to science communication. I want to apply this to my civil engineering science communication and help Pakistan realize that we need to do better engineering. So yeah, in sort of a very vague uh, summary, this is my major plan in the future. For Women Engineers Pakistan, we will continue doing what we do with a laser sharp focus, and we aim to. We already scaled to 8 cities across Pakistan. We want to double it in the next couple of years. Um, we aim to we reached over 4,000 young girls across Pakistan, about 110 girls in Nepal. We aim to create modules that reach girls in adjacent countries, hopefully in Afghanistan as well. Let's see. Some very interesting things are happening behind the curtains for Women Engineers Pakistan.
Fighting disasters, saving human lives, you're surely a superwoman, only without a cape. Thank you so much for your time and best of luck for your future endeavors.